So today we have another Digital Humanities Colloquium, this time by Maciej Ogrodniczuk. I hope I pronounce your last name correctly. On universal discourse towards a multilingual model of discourse relations. So I'm really curious about this one. Let me stop my sharing, Maciej, so you can take over. Maciej graduated from the Faculty of Mathematics, Informatics, and Mechanics at the University of Warsaw and received a PhD in linguistics in 2006. He's currently leading the Linguistic Engineering Group at the Institute of Computer Science in the Polish Academy of Sciences, and he is involved in numerous national and international projects related to language processing and digital humanities. So his research interests are semantic description of Polish, and in particular automated analysis of reference relations and discourse analysis. And I think your presentation is on that as well. Maciej, the virtual floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. First of all, thank you for the invitation, because I met Menno last year, and it seems that we might be doing something together. So I'm really glad I'm here. As you can see, I even reused your invitation as my title slide. So I'm really honored to be here. I'm happy that we are in the same time zone, because I'm in Warsaw, you're in the South Africa, and it happened now that it's 10 o'clock here too, which is really convenient, because might be less convenient if it was 3 a.m. or something, but it's very nice for Europe and you. So I'm from the Institute of Computer Science, that's you already know that, and the title of my presentation has a word towards, which means it's a work in progress I'm going to present. It's even more than that, because it didn't even start, but it's about a project that fortunately happened, that I received the information that I got funding for this Monday. So it's really fresh, but it had some preparatory work included. So I will tell you about that today. So I just have one slide about the thing that's really I'm really happy about. So that the project got funded. It's about 1 million euro. You don't understand anything from this slide apart from the National Science Centers. It was founded by the Polish National Funding Institution. And another thing that might be relevant, it's this HS thing. So it's going to be founded under the Humanities and Social Sciences discipline. So it's going to be about the multilingual model of discourse relations. And I will have to tell you about the discourse relations first. So what the discourse relations are. They are relations between situations, as most scholars stated, expressed explicitly or implicitly in a discourse. So maybe first I will have to tell you what discourse is, because there are many ways of talking about discourse. So I have another project that's about parliamentary discourse. So it's not this kind of discourse, but it's about a text understood as a series of situations, events, things happening in the text that are linked with certain relations, so that we can think about the text as a sentence, which also has words and certain relations between words that make this sentence. So to understand a text, you will have to detect these relations and then draw a tree or a graph that helps you understand what's happening in the text as a whole. So the relations are, as you say, explicit or implicit, and explicit relations are relations that are expressed by a connective and two or more arguments that possess distinct names and form this minimal discourse unit in the text. So for example, we can have two sentences or clauses that one is a reason and another one is a result, and then we can treat it as a relation that we name as cause So we can name such relations and think about how they are distributed in the text. So one word about explicit and implicit. Explicit relations are overtly signaled with connectives. So we have this linking words that link these clauses or sentences in a graph or a tree. They can be single words, for instance, and or multi-word, or even discontinuous. Not only something happened, but something else too. But we can also have relations signaled in the text without explicit use of connective, and then we can have implicit relations that still maintain a connection between two clauses or two sentences in the text. So why do we do it? What do we need these discourse relations for? So there were several reasons for taking up this work and applying for this project. So first of all, it's about understanding of text. So it seems that when we have tokens in a sentence and then we link it in some structure, syntactic structure, then if we do it the same with parts of the text, fragments of the text, we can try to understand the text better. So when we distinguish these basic elements of inter-sentential text understanding, we can probably do natural language generation or text summarization or complex question answering better than without having that. Another motivation is that there have been lots of frameworks that seem to be semantically compatible, but no unified representation adopted so far. So many scholars developed their own representation, formalism representation discourse, or discourse theories. I will show some of them in a moment. But maybe we could think about unifying them a bit. Without that, it's very difficult to verify these theories computationally. So building parsers that could identify these relations automatically. Of course, there were lots of such work. A lot of such work was completed for individual formalisms, but not necessarily across them. I was previously involved in detecting referential relations in the text, so anaphoric reference of things. So these relations are also part of discourse relations in many formalisms, for example, pan-discourse tree banks. So I thought it might be a natural extension of what I did before. And there were lots of works about large language models that were stating that the LLMs still fail to capture many such relations. So it might be nice and funny in the current world of doing everything in NLP with LLMs to try to do it either with probably some older methods, or maybe instruct the LLMs to teach them to detect these discourse relations a bit better. So there are lots of different motivations why I'm doing it, and that's why I applied for these great projects. So I already told you that there are many theories, so let me name a few. The most important or most widespread are the RST and PDTB, so rhetorical structural theory and pan-discourse tree bank related formalism. And they are, while they are semantically compatible or similar, they have their differences. So they have structural differences. Some build a tree of discourse in a text. Some build a graph. And of course, there are many theoretical differences between them, whether they model or not explicit and implicit relations. They do something with markers, how flexible they are. So I will probably try to unify that. And I added this slide yesterday just to show you, because I thought it might not be very straightforward to you if you didn't look at all these theories, how they are different and what's really inside. So each theory, each formalism consists of several relations named relations with arguments. They also have names. So let me use this previous example of cause and reason result to show you what the differences are in different form names. So we can see that last year I created a document with just analyzing all these different formalisms, and you can see that they have different names, the same relation, the same semantic relation, something resulting from something else. They can have different relations. There are different structural factors here. So in PDTB, you have different 3 levels of such relations, and you can have different levels of detail, but it's more or less the same. It's still cause and reason and result there. So I thought, well, maybe they are not too much different. We can try to use something about that. The example on the right shows you that the arguments can be expressed in either order. So we can say it started to rain, so we stayed at home. We stayed at home because it started to rain. It makes sense, but the markers are different. So lots of different things can happen here. So we have lots of such data sets, and resulting from that, we also have lots of existing discourse corpora in various languages, modeled according to these different formats. So in this project, we collected some of them to be able to work with them. They're mostly European languages. They correspond to European languages because that's the idea in the project, that I need to be able to find experts working on that. I'm going to use native speakers to help us with that. And being in the European Union, I have to be able to pay these people. So it's much more difficult when it goes outside the EU. But with Basque, Czech, Dutch, English, we can probably use it. So I'm just showing this table for 1 second to let you see that there are many different formalisms involved, many different text genres, and of course lots of languages. And some resources are truly multilingual, which means several languages are annotated according to the same model, so that you can try to compare your annotation cross-lingually if the texts are parallel. So one of such parallel text multilingual resources is the last one, the TED multilingual discourse bound. I was involved in annotating it, so I have one slide about that. It's a corpus of transcribed TED Talks. I hope you know that what TED Talks are. TED is an abbreviation for technology, entertainment, and design. And it's a brand of conferences organized by a non-profit foundation to advertise, as they say, the ideas worth spreading. So there is a speaker that talks on stage for like 10 minutes, and they make a video out of it and also transcribe their talk. And then voluntaries translate these talks into several languages, like 170. So lots of them are multilingual. And it's a great resource for NLP already, but when you make a parallel corpus out of these resources, you can try to do something useful with it. And one of the ideas was to take these TED Talks and annotate them at the discourse level, following one of the formats that we have. So it was PDTB, because it was at the time when we were involved in cost action text link about annotating discourse relations. So lots of the people there were using PDTB at that time. So we chose one of the formats, and we annotated them in these languages. So English, German, Russian, Portuguese, Polish, and Turkish. And then we started to compare the data, the parallel data that we had to check whether the discourse relations are the same in this annotation or different, which connectives are used, so that we could probably draw some conclusions. So it was a preliminary work, but quite useful. When annotating this data, we asked the annotators to search for both explicit or implicit relations between adjacent clauses, so only these short distance relations, and only binary arguments were were detected. So we managed to annotate approximately 600 relations per language. The inter-annotation agreement was quite high, and we also did some statistics for different agreement for different kinds of relations or different languages, so that we were able to compare that. But it was more or less the same, so 0.8, 0.7 everywhere. And we did some preliminary comparison on this data. So for example, Portuguese was found to have the highest percentage of implicit relations, or Polish had the highest number of entity relations. Entity relations are relations between sentences that don't have any specific name or any specific relation resulting from the discourse, but are talking about the same thing, about the same entity. So there is some coreference relation between clauses happening, and it also links the text into a coherent structure. But we also found out, it's not on the slide, but we found out that many of these differences result just from the translation. So voluntaries translated the documents as they wished, and sometimes there is splitting sentences for no reason, no apparent reason. And it also resulted in the fact that we could have probably more relations in one text, one language version than in another one. So lots of work still to be done here, but we did the first step with multilingual annotation of discourse relations. This paper, I will also show you some papers at the end, is cited, so people are referring to it. So I thought it was preliminary, but people are using it. So yes, probably I should start before displaying this. I really know that when there are many languages, formalisms, and standards, and you want to unify them, it's probably the best way to try to think about some new standard, and it results in what you can see in the picture. You probably know this comic XKCD. When you have 14 competing standards, as with discourse relations, it might happen that the 15th comes out, and hopefully it was the case. It was our case, but hopefully we didn't invent it. But it happened that ISO, I think you know ISO. ISO is an international organization for standardization, published in 2016 at the end of the year a norm, a standard for annotating semantic relations in discourse. So we thought, maybe if we had lots of different formalism and we want to annotate our data or probably do something to unify them, maybe we could take this standard and use it, and then well, try to look at it and see whether it suits our needs. So when we read this standard, it happened that, yes, it was also the idea of the authors that they were thinking about some pre-theoretical definition of discourse relations. So they were aware that lots of formalism are there, but they were thinking that they might go a step backwards and think that they have lots in common. So maybe we can define the same, but without referring to any specific theory of discourse. So that's what they did, and that's why they call it DR core. So they are defining core relations, taking a common denominator out of all the existing formalisms. And we thought that it might be great to use it in our project to adapt it to our needs. So some features of the ISO that it's designed for annotating these relations, and it is intended to provide the interoperable method for annotating locally established discourse relations, which means just what we had in PDTB. So it was really similar to what we did with the STED talks. It was supposed to be a genre and language universal, so exactly what we needed. And it seems the authors of this the standards were also working a lot with PDTB, so it was really well, appealing to us and understandable to use. So we did another experiment. So, one more slide about what's there. So it's all the same, what you already seen, lots of different relations. Probably the first and only time I'm showing the names. So there is a big table of 20 relations with explanations and some properties. You can see that our famous cause relation is there, and there are conditions, purpose, exceptions, contrasts, all the different things that you can think about of having in discourse and that you had previously in other formats. So I'm just showing it for reference. There are 3 slides with this table, but you can at least see the names of relations, so you can have an idea of what's there. Of course, with cause or contrast or explanation, it's easy to use it and identify the text, but the further you look at the table, it might happen that for some relations like expansion maybe or synchrony, the annotators might not be really certain whether it's expansion or coordination or synchrony or something else. So it's not that easy, not as easy I'm presenting it, but at least you have something to start with, some solid base with 20 relations in the ISO 24617. So with all these building blocks, I filed an application for a project that recently got funded, as I told you, with the following intention. So I wanted to unify the current situation a bit, so create a unified multilingual and corpus-based discourse model building upon the ISO standard and modeled formally as an ontology of discourse relations. And the ontology, apart from relation names, will also have arguments, argument names, and a list of connectives, so everything that's needed to do the annotation. And the idea was to do it by taking what's there, taking the data sets that already exist without annotating new data, without concentrating on just one language, but taking 10 languages and re-annotating or converting this data to this ISO annotation. And then as a last step, we would like to see whether it's computationally valid, so that we can implement prototype of a discourse parser to identify these relations in the text automatically. So that's the idea for the project. That's mostly what got approved. And there are some details now. So the first thing is, why should it work? Because lots of people were developing these data sets before, and probably even starting with ISO. We're thinking about unifying this representation. Why don't we have one representation, lots of data annotated according to it? Because the ISO is now used in 2 languages, so Polish and Portuguese. Because everyone, and it happened many times before in NLP, were trying to move top down. So trying to create a theory and then use these parts of theory first, agree on what should be part of the theory, and then annotate the data according to this theory. It never works, because you need to, first of all, you need to take all these people that were involved before in some annotation or some theory, and then try to persuade them to resign from what they invented and be part of the new theory. So they are reluctant to do it. If they are working on something for 10 or more years, then they don't want to do it. So we are not going from a joint theory to data annotation, but from harmonizing existing data to find this common denominator basing on the data. It worked before. We know the case of universal dependencies. There were lots of annotation frameworks for syntactic relations, and people were arguing for years that one language has a different category, syntactic category, than another one, and that they can't be merged. But then people from universal dependencies managed to do it, and now we have lots of UD data sets available. We also did it for co-reference. So there are two initiatives. One is called Universal Anaphora, and at Elric Calling 1 month ago, we had a paper about that because I'm also involved. And the title of the paper is Universal Anaphora the first 3 years, which means that people were discussing for 3 years now the theory, and it's not yet there. But another concept, another idea was CoreFUD. So the Czech people just took the data sets and converted them. Of course, it was not ideal, and but the data were converted. And at EMNLP this year, we are having another crack workshop that will have the CoreFUD shared task, the third in a row shared task based on this data, where people are building reference parsers, taking advantage of what the Czech people did 3 years ago. So it's already working, and it's working because people are coming with new data. When they see that their data were converted in a bad way, they're correcting it. So something happened without the big theory in the background. And yes, we are not. So we think that it might work with discourse relation too. And we are now starting from scratch. I already showed you that we have lots of data, lots of ideas, and this ISO standard that might outline the representation of discourse relations. In the table I was showing you, there were definitions or relation names from the ISO directly. So it's there. They call it core, but 20 relations are already defined. So you have something to start from. So we did some preparatory work, and one of the nicest thing is that we did already some ISO-based annotation for Polish, and it's one of the two corpora, as I already told you, annotated with this ISO relations compatible. We also have this multilingual TED Talk annotation, and PDTB is the closest to ISO, so I guess we could easily reuse it. We have analyzed various discourse representation schemata, and one of my colleagues was Aleksandra Tomaszewska, did some pilot work on modeling ISO-based discourse relations in 2 languages at the same time, so Portuguese and Polish. So it's going to work. That's what I was also showing to the evaluators, that we did something that proves it can be done. One of the corpora I was mentioning is the Polish discourse corpus. It's based on the Polish co-reference corpus, which is in turn based on the national corpus of Polish. So there is a big corpus, reference corpus of Polish, that we took the samples from to create the data for co-reference annotation, and then we are reusing this data to have discourse relations on top of that. So because most of the people think that co-reference is one of the phenomena that also exists or influences discourse. So it's great to have the same data set, to have different layers built on top of the same sentences. So it's 500,000 tokens. It's not very big, but it still have like 1,500 texts, short text, 250, 350 words each, and we managed to identify approximately 18,000 of discourse relations there, which means that it's quite substantial. What we did so far, the work was done in Clarin project, so we didn't have time or money to annotate it properly, which means we have just one pass, one annotation per text. So we had a text about Polish discourse corpus at direct calling, but it was, I should also treat it as a preliminary work. There are some statistics counted, but it's not reconciled. So yes, it's just the first attempt, and you should think about it as an orientation. So, but you can probably see that so coordination is the most frequent connective. So probably we should think about this coordinating relation as the most frequent, but and at the same time can signal many different things. I guess even in this previous example, when it was raining and we stayed at home, you can probably feel that it's more because-like or so-like than just a simple coordination, or conjunction as it's called here. Yes, conjunction is the relation, but probably uses and most frequently. So the annotation procedure of the PDC was that we had experienced linguists. That's for sure. You don't want to use crowdsourcing because you really need to have people to let people understand what's there. So I would really recommend linguists there. And they were meeting frequently to refine guidelines, because it never works when you have the annotation guidelines that it's going to not to be changed during the annotation. So only 20% of annotations were verified and externally reviewed, but it's still not too much to calculate in the annotation agreement. So we don't have that. We were using our Polish annotation platform, but I guess people were not happy with that. So maybe we'll do something else in the next step. So what's going to happen in the project? I just have a few slides about the 4 steps we are planning to do in this new project. First of all, the ontology. So we will formalize this model using the ontologies of linguistic annotation. So there is already a model that many of the discourse formalisms are linked to, and we would like to put the ISO-based model also there. So apart from discourse relations, arguments, we would like to have also a set of discourse markers that are multilingual. So we will be able to see which relation is signaled with which marker in different languages. We plan to use 10 languages, datasets from 10 languages. And we will also have these corpus-based examples. We don't intend to annotate any new data, but the data is already there. So if it was selected so that it contains, the datasets contain certain relations, they will also be valid and useful in our model. So I guess we will extract some meaningful examples. And as with lots of ontologies, they are not really readable in their base form. So would like to also to have some browser-based user-friendly ontology viewer implemented in this step. So the second step will be just taking the data and harmonizing them. We'll start with annotation guidelines. There will be instructions for specific markers or some methods for consistency checks, because we understand that semantic annotation is very, very difficult. But we will try to do it as best as we can. So I hope the annotation guidelines is a solid base for that. We plan to have native speakers involved in that, starting with junior linguists. But before doing that, it might make sense, even maybe not for all the data sets, but as ISO is really similar to PDTB, so we thought that maybe it could be automatically converted from one formalist to ISO, so that people are not involved in doing the annotation of phenomena which could be easily converted or are the same in both formalists. So we really would like to do some pre-annotation automatically. We are thinking about inception as the annotation framework, and apart from involving these linguists from different countries, we would like also to have one experienced linguist checking what they did, and our Polish team of linguists to help them with everything, because it's going to be a big effort, and as always, the annotation projects are taking more time than what is planned. So it's more than a year of work, definitely. And of course, we will make them available, the results available in some public repository, in some formats. Connell.u is probably the easiest and most widespread format recently. So that's the plan. As the next step, we will try to implement this discourse parser prototypes. So I think it's very difficult to say which technology is going to be there after the annotation ends, because like 2-3 years ago, no one was really thinking that LLMs will be so widespread and everyone will be doing everything with large language models. But that's the current idea of doing things, that we, after the pre-trained model models the language competence, we are fine-tuning them to do certain tasks. So one of the tasks can be discourse relation detection, and I guess we will be using our data to fine-tune LLMs just for that. And of course, when we do something, in my previous project about coreference, I did several prototypes, starting with the rule-based systems, then statistical systems, and neural systems at the end. And we're comparing them. We have to have some methodology to evaluate such prototypes. I hope we will have lots of them, and I'll be also evaluating them on some leaderboard or in some other way. We'll make everything available open source, because that's what we should do. And the last step is going to be some analysis of the results of dissemination, as we were naming it. So first of all, when we have lots of different data, multilingual data, different genres, text genres, annotated, we will be able to do some comparative studies based on our data. We can do lots of things, starting with comparing frequencies, of course, of kinds of different relations or markers in different languages. Maybe we can track some correlations with language families there, but we can also think about comparing comparing translations, and checking how one operator, one connected, is translated to another one in some context. So lots of useful work can be done here. I guess we will just start it, and some other people could take and do their work and test their hypothesis there. One of the ideas is to use this data in an evaluation campaign. So similarly to what we have with coreference or lots of shared tasks for different NLP tasks, we can also try to use our data in a shared task, hopefully co-located with one of discourse or another related workshops. There is one workshop which already has a disrupt shared task that takes the original data annotated according to different formalisms, and without doing any conversion tries to develop the parser that will parse identify discourse relations in these different formats. So I hope we can use our data in one of such shared tasks. CODI is a workshop on discourse relations, also co-located with major NLP conferences. So I guess they will be happy to have a new shared task there. And yes, I'm trying to write a book about universal discourse, whatever it is. Now it's just an idea, but I hope it's going to be more fleshy at the end of the project. The project is planned for 4 years, so we have lots of time to do something useful. And I hope you will be able to see some results soon. So before the book is published, before you can read anything solid about universal discourse, I have 4 pieces of work for you. The first one, or even more, maybe 4, because the 5th one is in Polish. So the first one in Polish was just starting work on discourse relations in 2019. But then you have a text about TED MDB and some 2 texts about the Polish discourse corpus annotated according to ISO. So the last one was at LDK last year, and we had a Polish discourse corpus this year at Eric Colling, and another one text describing this Polish-Portuguese experiment at a workshop at Eric. So it was a joint ACL ISO workshop on interoperable semantic annotation. So there's something to read for you. It's just starting, so I really keep my fingers crossed, and That's all I wanted to show you. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm ready to take them. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. That was a really nice presentation. I do see Tanya has a question in the chat. You said you would like to do pre-processing before starting your annotation or conversion efforts. What would that pre-processing entail? Do you need, for example, for the speech information?
Yes, I think we will need all information that we can do. Probably I would start with parsing this data, or maybe it's already parsed with some UD parser, because that's standard. Even though we have, that's a funny thing, that even though we have some better parsers for individual languages, they are probably much difficult to use when you have 10 or 100 languages. So UD pipe can do the work, and then we can probably try to see what's there. Of course, it's not yet defined, so I don't know what's really in this some of the formats. I didn't check before, so I just know that there is a corpus annotated according to SDRT, for example. But yes, I will have to take a look what's there, and maybe try to implement or think about how to implement such conversion. But parts of speech definitely will help. Probably also coreference annotation. So maybe we could also try to use some coreference parser. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe LLMs can be consulted, and they will tell us much more about text than we can do with the current tools, because sometimes people come to me and say, "Oh, well, we don't need to do any coreference resolution now, because you can ask LLM and it really works. Please take a look." And it seems GPT-4o is really good at that, for example. And a year in a year we are going to have probably even better tools, because they are learning quickly using our data.
Cool, thanks. Carolina also has commented 2 questions. Thank you for an engaging talk. I have 2 questions. What are the main obstacles you anticipate in the process of creating and evaluating of the Universal Discourse model? And the other question is, how do you select the existing discourse corpora for re-annotation?
Yes, so the obstacles, there can be many obstacles. What reconciliation of these different formalism is one of the toughest things, because if it was easy, someone would probably do it before. I don't really believe it's just a matter of not having money to do it, because people will be definitely doing. So there are theoretical problems between these different formalisms. There are different accents put on different things. But we have this background of CoreFUD and probably also universal dependencies. So sometimes you need to neglect the differences that are not too meaningful, even though one scholar is really unhappy about that. But there's much more gain when you do this lossy conversion than just sticking to all these details. So I think that's the way of overcoming these obstacles, these differences. So, but I guess that's the most grave obstacle that we'll be having. And how did I select the existing discourse corpora for annotation? That's a great question. I also had it when I was presenting the project application at the National Science Center. So I told them the truth, that it's practical. So I only chose the Indo-European languages, and the languages, the data sets which I could easily find experts for. So I was involved in this texting cost action, and there were people also from these countries, these European countries, that were willing to do something. So I thought, oh, maybe I could involve them. I could still have links with them. So let's select data in languages I could more or less understand, rather than just looking for Chinese or Japanese data, or some data that are probably much more difficult to find experts and pay them, because I have to pay for the annotation to make it successful. So there's no good answer for that, or it was just a practical thing. So I took mostly European corpora because of that.
Thanks. I hope that answers the question. It actually links to a question I had as well. So, with your kind of upcoming visit to South Africa, would you be open to collaborations on, for example, South African languages? I think that would be really cool.
Yes,
So
sure.
I'm really not sure if there's anybody in South Africa working on something like this, but then how cool would it be if the South African languages could be, really directly joined with the kind of high resource languages in Europe?
Well, it would be great. I was doing the same for Polish, because now everyone says, well, Polish is in Europe. It's relatively well resourced in NLP and all such things. But I remember times about 10 years ago, more than that, when I was looking at what people are doing with other languages, and I thought, oh, well, let's add Polish there. It would be great. So let's do the same for South African languages. I guess we could also think about it. But then it will be difficult to fund such work from this project, because it must be in Europe, I guess. But if you have your own project, you could join. If you would like to volunteer, it's also would be really great. I also
got like this a call for action.
Yes, it's a call for action. I got this question as well from one of the evaluators, and it happened that there was a guy from Iran that was also well, just reached for me because we were in one of the coast actions, and he thought, oh, well, maybe I could collaborate with you on Persian. I will have my own funding, but let's do something on Persian. So I go, oh, great. So I answered the evaluators that yes, we have one guy that is from Iran, and we could also think about the same in the South African context. Great.
Very cool. So Tanya's then replying to this. So that's why Tanya was asking what you needed for pre-processing. We currently don't have parsers for the South African languages, only morphology, part of speech, named entity, and chunking. And UD is next.
Yes, but I guess it's you might need it for automated annotation, or maybe you don't need it. But if you are capable of doing some annotation without that, you don't think about text as a whole, looking at parts of speech, right? You're just looking at the fragments, and then there is some connective or some other means of signaling this relation in the text. So if you are doing this annotation manual, you don't really need that, of course, for pre-annotation. But then if you're planning to do some pre-annotation, then you need to have some data annotated according to one of the formalisms. Of course, you can build a parser by processing plain text, but well, anything is possible here. So there are many ways. I can also share my thoughts on that if you are interested. And LLMs are obviously not an option because you don't have them, right? Yes, I'm opening the chat window.
Yeah.
So let's build it. Let's build it. Now it's so multilingual that if we don't do it, then probably some big company will do it for your languages. Which is one of the ideas, of course, because you need to have lots of computing power to do that. That's right.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. Thanks. Are there any other questions? I mean, I have a few more questions, but I think it would be useful to really kind of dive into that, because these are kind of more somewhat larger questions. Perhaps I'll try one if nobody else has a question in the chat. So I was curious, we still have a few minutes left, right? So how these discourse parsers would work. Do you need to somehow describe the semantics of the parts that you're trying to find a relation for, or what kind of information do you use to describe the chunks where you're trying to find a relation?
Yes, because it's there are many steps of parsing this discourse, right? You need to identify these discourse units first, so these chunks, and you probably need syntactic information for that, because you can have sentence clauses there, or which are different parts, even though it's still in the same sentence. So that's the first thing, and you might need syntactic information for that. But then I guess you would normally, if you're annotating such data, you are looking at the connectives first, right? So if it's a because there, then there is very likely some reason-result connection relation, but maybe this because or this and signals something else. But at least you need to you can look at it and try to start with it. I don't know what LLMs, for example, are doing, but probably they are also they have this information somehow embedded in these layers, so that they can use it, both syntax and this connective information, or any other things that we probably don't know, because maybe you can also think about looking at some ambiguous connectives such as and can probably signal lots of different relations, and then there might be some, there should be, they must be some other clues in the sentence that distinguish this and from that and we just don't know yet about that, and maybe just looking at what the annotators were doing before then, we can learn, or our tool can learn that. I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that, but yes, we
Okay.
have to start with looking for such clues, right?
Okay. No, I had the feeling that there is already a lot of work on these kind of discourse parsers, so that it's kind of like a solved problem. But this sounds more like, we're just starting, and there are a lot of opportunities to kind of try out different things.
Yes, we have to first start reading what's there. I know that there are lots of books on discourse and discourse parsing, and lots of people were trying to solve it. But yes, we have to reconcile it a bit.
Yeah.
I guess it's doable. That's the most important thing. Of course, you can just take what's there and convert it somehow, and then have some parser, and it's going to work. But then after doing such first baseline, you might be reading a little bit more and trying to do something more sophisticated. So yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. So it sounds like really a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
I realize you have a meeting in about 2 minutes, so I won't keep you too long, but thank you so much for this presentation. I thought it was really, really interesting. And yeah, perhaps we can actually use this as a call for action and see if we can do something like that for the South African languages as well.
Please do. I'm coming in October. That's the plan. So I will probably be able to meet some of you and we can talk.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here, and see you in October.
Yep. See you in October.
Goodbye.